John, welcome to the Building and Growing podcast. We're delighted to have you here today.
Thanks, Lucas. Appreciate the invite. Looking forward to the chat.
You're most welcome. So, John, I was going to run ahead and introduce you, but would you like to introduce yourself and we'll kick off from there?
Cool. At least I was trying to do that part well anyway. So, my name is John Ryan. As you know, I'm the CEO and founder of Gigable.com. We'll get into what Gigable.com is a bit more later, I think. But I'm 37 years old. I've got a kind of a varied background. 9 years in the Irish Army. Retired as a captain a few years ago. Before that, I was in finance. I did a finance degree. Was a stockbroker. I've also done an MBA along the way there as well.
Fantastic.
So I've got a bit of a mixed background, but here I am, founder and CEO of Gigable.
Indeed. Thank you so much for that. And, what a variety from stockbroking to the military to an MBA and, now the founder and CEO of a tech startup.
Yeah, and I remember the moment actually a few years ago when I did realize actually I want to be an entrepreneur, because I had done a couple of different things and I loved the army. I really enjoyed being in stockbroking as well. I was an equity analyst, very analytical. I liked that. I did an MBA, got really into business as well, but it was only when I was in my kind of mid-30s really that I realized actually, what would suit me, my skills, my interests, would to get into entrepreneurship. So a bit late realizing it, but I'm very happy that I did eventually anyway.
Indeed, and look, better late than never.
Exactly, yeah.
Was there any, let's say, one particular skill or focus that, you found you were able to apply in, as an equity analyst in the military and now as an entrepreneur?
Yeah, that's a great question. Actually, there's probably quite a few, but I think the one that's probably most translatable from, we'll start with the finance and the stockbroking side, is being able to kind of model the future.
Mm-hmm.
That's tough, because it's impossible, first of all, right?
Indeed.
There's kind of an element of arrogance to say you've built a model and this is the way it's going to be. That's not true, right? You've made your best guess and you've taken in the variables, and that's essentially what equity analysts do as well.
Indeed.
They're reading all the research, they're analyzing the company, they're listening to the calls or whatever the investor calls with the CEO and all that stuff, and then they're making a model on that basis. So that's kind of similar to what you do as a founder. You take in all the variables, you're looking at the bigger picture, the smaller picture, the internal stuff, the external stuff, the things you can can't control, and you're trying to build a model out of that.
Indeed.
So that would be the finance kind of relatable skills. I think from the military side, it's a lot of what the military is about is also planning, but it's also about being able to deal with a lot of uncontrollables.
Indeed.
And just to keep your head about you when others can't or wouldn't like to be in that kind of situation. That most people would. I think Steve Jobs said, you've got to be crazy to be an entrepreneur. Nobody else would do it.
Yeah.
And it's kind of true, because there's so many things you can't control. And so many things you're responsible for that you also kind of can't control, but you have to do your best. You have to chart a course and you have to find a way to win the battle, fight the war, whatever analogy you want to use there. So I think that's probably, it's kind of more of a, personal quality that the army develops in people that definitely helps when you're in the world of entrepreneurship.
Absolutely. I think, one of the quotes I've heard many times is it's all about getting comfortable with discomfort.
Yeah, absolutely. It's how much stress can you tolerate, and how do you, and actually it's not about tolerating it, it's about changing your perspective on stress. And just kind of looking at from a different, nothing is either good or bad. Was that Hamlet, I think, wasn't it? Nothing is either good or bad, but thinking makes it so.
Yes.
That's exactly the kind of mindset I've kind of landed on. Eventually you have to kind of get there, because otherwise you're just going to be like, oh, this is too much. Because there's always just countless problems to deal with, and that's just the nature of it. It's not that you're doing something wrong. Every business is just dealing with problems day to day. It's just daily challenges, and change that perspective on those things and you'll just find it a lot easier to get through it.
Yeah.
And that'll reflect on how you act as a leader and your performance yourself, your personal, how you feel personally.
Yes.
So it's actually crucial. It's a crucial point about the whole thing.
Indeed. And what a fantastic quote from Hamlet.
Yeah. I always say that quote and I actually didn't know where it came from. I'd forgotten, so I had to look it up when I was preparing for it today. I said, where did that actually come from? We can sure I wasn't quoting anything kind of controversial.
Yeah.
But actually it's from Hamlet, actually. So that was going back to my school days that I still remembered that. So that's, 20 years ago. It's still in my head. So
indeed.
It's a good one.
Well, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
And look, John, tell us about Gigable and your journey there.
Yeah, that's a really tough question, I guess. That's when I've been kind of you've got your pitch when you're selling what you are. You've got your pitch when you're talking to investors, and then when you're talking to friends and family, what does the company do? But I really like to go back to Simon Sinek's start with why model. So you've got the why in the middle. It's like the core of what you are. And you've got the how, which is kind of the next layer.
Yes.
And you've got your outer layer is the kind of what of what you are, right? So applying that kind of model to Giggable, because we do a lot of things. We've got a lot of stuff going on for us. The what is essentially a marketplace. So what we are is a marketplace. We've got business owners or merchants, primarily restaurants, some events and security companies, people like that on one side of the marketplace. And then on the other side, we've got the gig worker community at large, a lot of whom are delivery drivers, some work in security, events, stewards, hospitality, stuff like that. So huge gig economy population out there now these days. So that's the what. The how is we're a platform. We're essentially a platform of technology. We've got web apps and mobile apps for both the merchants or the business owners, as well as the freelancers, the gig workers on the platform. So that's our how. The why is always harder to put your kind of your finger on or put good language about it. But essentially, from day one, I thought it would be a great idea to create a community around what is a huge population of gig workers. The lower estimates in the UK are about 4.8 million gig workers.
Wow.
Upper estimates are about 7 million.
Yeah, sure.
But there's no real kind of connection there. There's no real identity for gig workers. It's quite centralized in a few big players. It's not like readily accessible. So really the why of what we're doing is to create a kind of a fair and transparent and an open marketplace for the benefit of both the merchants and the gig workers out there. And actually that's quite a differentiated mission for us, or quite a differentiated why. There's not really anybody trying to do it in that way. So that would be the very long answer as to what we are.
Fantastic. Yeah, look, I mean, doing a lot there and a lot to unpack. Just a quick comment about what you said in terms of explaining what Giggable does to investors or other stakeholders. It's difficult because investors want to hear something, merchants want to hear another, and as do other stakeholders. So
it's tough, but I really like that model because it's actually good for yourself. Even like what are we doing? How are we doing it? Or why are we doing it? It's just to remind yourself of that model. I think it's brilliant. It's a great book. Start with why. It's one every founder should read when they're starting out. I believe it's one of the ones I read. I was lucky to read it at the beginning of my journey, so I did kind of try and define that why at the start. But it's a good model just to help you kind of put edges around everything that you do, because every company does a lot of different things for different people. It's sometimes it can be quite hard to kind of create a statement around that works for everybody.
Indeed. So why don't we sort of dive into the multiple stakeholders that the platform works with? So you mentioned there are merchants, there are gig economy workers. If we start with merchants, let's say restaurants, what sort of pain points are you solving for those stakeholders?
Yeah, there's a lot of pain points in running a restaurant. It's a very difficult industry, and I think, it's been quite widely publicized, and there was a good report last year by McKinsey basically stating that if you're delivering food from your restaurant through any of the aggregator platforms, you're losing money on it, essentially. So bless you.
Thank you. Sorry.
Yeah. So you're essentially losing money. I think it's in the order of about a quid per basket value. Average basket value is being lost on orders. Okay. So the main pain point that restaurants have is they're not making money from doing delivery, right? So they're losing money. They're not making a profit. That would be the primary point. The second pain point, they've kind of lost control of their own brands. They've become kitchens for bigger players who own the customer, own the brand, own the experience. And I think a lot of restaurants, especially brand-conscious restaurants, there's thousands of them literally in London that are worried about their brand and losing their customer. Yeah. And the experience that their customer has once the food leaves the premises as well. So that's a big issue as well. And I think just to kind of capture that really for merchants, it's that kind of loss of control feeling as well, that they're not in control of their own destinies. By not having control of their own delivery operation. Of course, these are restaurants who have delivery as part of what they do. Being able to decide who's delivering the food to your customers, having a regular team of delivery drivers. Yeah. These things actually matter more and more now. The customer experience with respect to delivery was kind of forgotten about in the early days. It's just get it out there any way you can as quick as possible. And that still kind of is important, and it's not a trade-off kind of conversation. It's still something that you can do with your own driver team. Yes. But when what we're trying to do and what a merchant comes on to Giggable, they're getting back at control. They have their own regular team. They're getting to pick their drivers. Yes. They're taking control of the costs as well. So they're no longer paying 35-40% off the top of their basket to an
Yeah.
aggregator, which is kind of the going rate these days, unless you have extremely strong leverage in the
Yes.
market. And the only players kind of who do have that kind of leverage are the big brands, like, you know, I won't mention any names or whatever, but the big brands pay a tiny percentage of their basket value to get deliveries done,
Yeah.
whereas the smaller restaurants pay a huge percentage. So in essence, the smaller restaurants around the bigger brands are subsidizing the delivery costs of bigger players. So it's all kind of, it's a bit messed up.
Yeah.
I think
yeah.
a lot of the more kind of tuned in restaurant owners and merchants know that
Yes.
as well. So we're trying to kind of correct that a little bit and just give them another option essentially. So those would be the main pain points for the merchants that we primarily serve at the moment, being restaurants. A little bit different for those in the events and security space. For them, it's, you know, using subcontractors or staffing agencies. They'd have a 1 in 2 turn up rate on average, like anecdotally, just from talking to some customers and other players.
Yeah.
With us, you know, we've partnered with a security company in Ireland, and they had 95% turn up rate
Oh, wow.
of
Yeah.
people who actually wanted to be there.
Yes.
And that just comes down to the fundamentals of our platform. Like the gig workers have their own identity. It's a rated profile. They're choosing the day and the time and the shifts and the business that they want to work with. So they're in total control.
Yeah.
So they have ownership. So there's a kind of a reciprocal relationship being built there that just doesn't exist elsewhere. So that was a really nice proof of concept. So they have slightly different points, but at the end of the day, they need to fulfill a service. They need to do it as effectively as they can. They need to keep control of their costs as well. So similar pain points, but slightly different depending on the industry that you're talking about.
Indeed.
Yeah.
So I suppose what you're helping the restaurants to do is, you know, reduce the delivery costs, choose, gig workers based upon, let's say, their rating, and it's the same in the security industry.
Yeah, and on that first point, actually, I forgot to finish off the cost point of view, but the McKinsey study said you lose about £1 per order using the same basket value with drivers that you got through our network, paying our fees and paying the drivers a living wage
Yes.
as well per hour. Same basket value would earn you about £2.50 profit.
Oh,
right?
wow.
So
wow.
like we did that, and it was nice for us to be able to go, right, is what we're selling, does it stack up to unbiased objective data from McKinsey? Yes, it does. Like, so it's lose £1 or make $2.50 per basket on average, you know.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
that was nice to be able to prove that out.
It could almost be a sort of a slogan, you know, go from a loss to a profit with Gigable.
That's essentially it. You know, I think most restaurants that they're interested in hearing that story, you know, we notice ourselves even with our outbound conversations that we'd have from a business development perspective that most restaurant owners want to hear what we got to say, you know, because they know that there's a problem. And a lot of them are too busy to put their finger on exactly how to fix it, or they don't even know. So it's an education piece too.
Indeed, yeah. And, you know, thinking off the top of my head, it reminds me of sort of TransferWise and their famous calculator on their website, you know, where you would just type the numbers in and you could see that problem visualized there for you, feel the pain, and then think of TransferWise whenever you needed to make an international payment.
Absolutely. It just says it in black and white, nice and clear. That's nice about numbers. It's just pure objective information that you know is true, you know. So
Indeed.
that's good, yeah.
Indeed. So we've talked about, let's say, the restaurant or security operation, but in order to, you know, let's say, keep that operational promise to the customer, you know, you do need the gig worker to fulfill it. You've mentioned that you pay them a livable wage. Are you able to talk a little bit about how you incentivize those gig workers?
Yeah, absolutely. So our platform is like essentially the gig economy is out there. There's whatever between 5 and 7 million people in the UK in the gig economy, but largely they're kind of siloed in big aggregated companies who control what they're paid and what they charge the merchants as well on the other side.
Yes.
Ours is quite different. Like, we're a decentralized marketplace, if you want to use that kind of terminology. So the merchants are in control, including in terms of what pay they're offering to the market, and the freelancers or the gig workers, whichever term you want to use, are also in control in terms of choosing which restaurant or which business they want to work with, and, you know, the dates and the times and everything else that suit them. So it's totally decentralized. But what we do have is we've had a living wage initiative in the platform for a while, where we're getting merchants to buy into paying a minimum
Fantastic.
to their basically the gig workers that they use. On average, it's much higher than the living wage anyway. I think it's about $12.50 in Ireland and something similar in the UK as well, in pound sterling, obviously.
Yes.
So, you know, it's already happening on average, but what we want, and it's actually just a way for businesses to promote what they're already doing, is just to say we commit to this living wage initiative, and every hour will be paid, even if it's a quiet hour, you're going to have a living wage paid to you anyway. So
fantastic.
That's a great way that we're actually going to build into our model as a kind of, this is how we do business. It's an initiative at the moment, and we've had great feedback and, you know, a lot of buy-in to doing that. But in the future, it's going to become core of what we are actually, because it's important for the service delivery to the merchant. It's important for the service delivery in terms of the customer experience, like the end customer, the end consumer, and also from the perspective of the gig worker, which is the part that people often forget about, is there's a gig worker here who's relying on this for an income as well. And I think it's really important to keep them kind of center of mind too. So in terms of the incentives for the freelancers and the gig workers themselves, so one of the biggest ones we have is essentially being able to say that I'm definitely working these hours. I'm definitely getting paid this amount of money, because we only do shifts on the platform.
Yes.
So that's a crucial differentiator too. So when you're a gig worker and you're checking into one of the bigger companies out there on a kind of an on-demand basis, you don't really know what you're going to be paid, you know. And I've spoken to gig workers or freelancers, delivery drivers, who've been checked in for 2 or 3 hours and made £5, you know. So it's not great, you know, especially if you're relying on it to supplement an additional income, like as an additional income to supplement a day job or whatever. Or if it's your full-time income, it's even more kind of you know, insecure and kind of concerning. So all the work on our platform is shifts. So there's a rate of pay that's transparently shown as part of that shift that's on offer. There's the guaranteed minimum that you will be paid. So they know straight away fundamentally that this is a different deal, right? So I'm getting dedicated work with a business who also has a rating actually. So the business owners are also rated by the gig workers on our platform. So there's a bit of leveling up going on there in terms of responsibility. So totally different deal from the outset. But within that, once they've been bought into the platform and they're doing gigs and they're earning money, we also have a partnership with a company called Collective Benefits. They're based in London here as well. I believe we were one of the first companies that partnered with them for freelancer or gig worker benefits, if not the first. Definitely the first in Ireland, but definitely in the first couple, I would say, in the UK. And essentially, you know, from between 5 to 15 gigs, I think are thresholds at the moment. If you do 5 gigs in a month, or if you do up to 15 gigs in a month, you get access to these tiers of benefits with Collective Benefits.
Fantastic.
So things like digital GP, mental health services, accident and injury insurance, compassionate leave payouts, family benefits, deals and discounts at retailers, fuel cards. There's a whole suite of stuff in there. It's really good actually. It's actually better than what you get as an employee in most places. And all you have to do is just a few gigs a month and you get that access. So that's something we're very proud of as well.
Fantastic. That's really good. So, you know, you're looking to help the gig workers understand what they're going to get paid, and then, you know, on top of that, there's the potential for some insurance and benefits. I want to sort of just dive back into the example you gave about gig workers not necessarily knowing what they're going to earn, just for maybe the benefit of some of the audience. So certainly based upon the research that I've done from within the industry, let's say that, you know, you're a motorbike rider, you might be paid a small amount to be on call, and then you'll get bonuses based upon the number of deliveries that you make. So if you make 5 deliveries, you might unlock, you know, let's say £50 in total, and maybe an additional £10 bonus for reaching 50. You know, so £10 each delivery plus a £10 bonus at the end. Are there any other sort of let's say payments or contractor models you've come across that, you know, you're solving the problem for?
So there's quite a kind of mix, you know, broadly we'll say the delivery industry, if we'll just stick with that, because that's where a lot of the gig worker focus kind of is, where, you know, there's ways that they incentivize through surge pricing when it's really busy at the weekends and stuff like that, where you'll get more pounds or euros per delivery than you would on a Wednesday morning or something like that. So they kind of balance it that way. But I think fundamentally that kind of model is flawed in many ways, you know, because first of all, the service delivery gig workers are incentivized to hop between platforms. Who's going to pay me the most in this particular moment or not, completely forgetting about the merchants who are waiting for their food to be picked up.
Indeed.
So there's kind of some collateral damage to that approach, no matter what way you cut it.
Yes.
And ultimately, the centralizing aggregator platform that, you know, is controlling the order from the consumer, sending it to the merchant, the restaurant, and also, you know, scheduling, should we say, the gig worker, the delivery driver to pick it up. like they're centralizing and holding all of that responsibility, all of that cost. So they're fundamentally incentivized to keep the pay as low as possible and keep the price as high as possible on the other side, because that's the way they make profit, is in the middle.
Yes.
So that's why there's a fundamental kind of a mismatch of or misalignment of incentives.
Yeah.
There, because as I said, ultimately the lower the pay and the higher the cost, the better off they are. Like, that's just the business model.
Indeed.
So
indeed.
It's kind of, no matter what way you cut it up, it's not really great for anybody in it. Now, that's not to say that people don't make a lot of money. Freelancers, some of them get on great on some of those platforms. They make good money in college. They do a couple of hours here and there and it really suits them. They work the surge pricing hours. So I'm not saying it's all bad. They've done a lot of great things and they've reshaped and created new industries. So I don't want to be kind of ragging on them, the whole time or whatever. But there are some fundamental flaws, I believe, in it that we're trying to fix or whatever.
Indeed.
When it comes to other industries, then it's usually more straightforward. It's usually just they pay good rates of pay per hour. So like we've seen jobs like where people are coming in to get what would be normally minimum wage jobs if it was an employed person, paying 14, 15 quid an hour. Nice. To get that guaranteed gig worker working with them every day. And they're happy to pay that because they get that control. They get somebody that they know coming in the door. They know that they're going to have people who are picking the days that they can definitely be there. So like people not turning up to business is one of the biggest headaches for any business owner.
Yeah.
Like you need the food to be packed and delivered. You need whatever it is to be done in your warehouse. You need these things to be done. It's not really about like cracking the whip at the employees and making sure everybody turns up when they're told to. This is a much better way where people get to pick and say, yes, I will be here.
Yes.
That's the day that works for me. Those are the hours that work for me. And I might be doing delivery tomorrow. It doesn't really matter. I can jump between jobs on different days if I want to, which a lot of our gig workers do.
Yeah.
That just works a lot better for everybody, right? And ultimately they're being paid more to do it that way as well, because the business really needs people to be there and be engaged and working and really kind of committed to that work for the hours that they are actually there. So we're trying to shake up that industry a little bit with the new model as well.
Indeed, fantastic. And John, you mentioned the fact that gig workers might, let's say, do one job one evening and a different job the day after. When it comes to payments, how do you pay those gig workers?
Yeah, so payments has always been a big part of what this platform is. It's how we met first a couple of years ago in the earlier days in Revolut, and ultimately the merchant is paying the freelancer first of all, right? So they're paying the gig worker, the freelancer, delivery driver, whatever, through the platform.
Yes.
So we've created ways for them to do that. The kind of the easiest way to do that and to onboard and get a payment system set up is through credit cards or one of the gateways. So we use Stripe for that.
Yes.
We built on Revolut's business API then to create a direct kind of peer-to-peer open banking type integration with them. It's not necessarily open banking always. It depends on what the freelancer's account is on. So a really cool Revolut integration there that does enable faster payments.
Yes.
But also in the future, we've actually partnered. It was in the press. I think it was covered in Forbes last year with Weaver, another company that have an office here in London, to build essentially a bigger, stronger, more complete ecosystem for payments between merchants and the freelancers on the platform. That's just instant all the time. Like Fantastic. That's our goal. So our goal that we set last year publicly, we've had it for a while privately, is to get all gigs on the platform paid same day.
Yeah, wow.
So like everybody, I think on average at the moment it's about 4 or 5 days, right? And that's because things need to be cleared. The merchant needs to go in and check the hours and all that kind of stuff. So we've made it a lot easier from a UX perspective for merchants to check into the Gigable business dashboard and go, yes, they're all right, they're all correct, and that's it, and the payments can go, right? So that's kind of there already, but it's the systems behind that we need to be quicker. So if that's on Stripe, it's going to take a few days to clear before it gets into the bank account of the freelancer.
Indeed.
So we just want to try and create a system and infrastructure there that makes it that as soon as the merchant says, yes, that's correct, it's ready to go and it's in the account of the freelancer to use and spend whatever way they want to. It's something we kind of achieved with Revolut.
Yes.
If it was Revolut to Revolut.
Yeah.
But we want that to be across the board for everybody, regardless of what bank they're on.
Yeah.
So there's ways that we can do that, and we're kind of excited about that build, and hopefully we'll have something to release there in the first half of the year as well.
Fantastic. Yeah, look, moving to that sort of bank agnostic instant payments will be
that's the dream.
Great. Yeah, because I know cash flow can be difficult for a lot of the gig workers. So definitely a great problem that you're solving.
We always, we regularly, I don't say we regularly do needs analysis with the community, and we're anecdotally always receiving feedback. Which is great. They're always willing to tell you what they want more of. Usually they want more gigs, more
Yeah.
variety, so different types of jobs, different businesses, different places. Like they like to mix it up generally.
Yes.
But then
yeah.
second is always payments, like faster payments. Everybody wants to be paid same day.
Indeed.
Ideally.
Indeed.
Obviously, there's companies out there that provide early access to earnings and stuff like that or whatever. It's not really a way that we want to address that issue. We'd prefer to address the kind of core problem, which is essentially the system that will allow, regardless of your bank or whatever, for you to receive that payment as soon as it's sent from the merchant's account, so that's ultimately the problem we'd like to solve first.
Indeed. And John, you're a venture-backed company. Are you able to provide us with sort of the VC thought process when they're investing in platform businesses?
Yeah, that's a great question, and it's something that you kind of learn over time. It's one of those things I wish I knew couple of years ago, so I could frame the whole narrative and the whole investor deck and investor conversation process. But when it comes to platform businesses, a lot of it's going to center on your users, like your unit economics. Like that's really what a good investor, or VC or fund will be looking at if they know about your space. I think that's probably kind of a pretext to my answer, is that investors who know about your space and who know about what they're investing in will ask these kinds of questions.
Yes.
A lot of investors sometimes just don't know about this stuff either, and you'll figure that out as a founder as you're having the conversation. Like, is this kind of investor who's investing in a vision sense?
Yeah.
And they just like you and the team and the product? That's cool too. There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing to say one way is more successful than the other. But then you have the more kind of read up and kind of more sector specific and kind of sector experts that will ask you the more detailed questions. Generally, they're about your cost of acquisition. So how much does it cost you to acquire a new user? For us, it's merchants and the gig workers. What's your lifetime value of that user? So like, how much money do you make from them over the course of 6 months, 12 months, or how long do they stay with you?
Yeah.
And how much do you make from them ultimately? What is that multiple? So essentially, what's the multiple of your cost versus your lifetime value? And does that multiple look attractive? So those are things you want to kind of grow your LTV, but keep your cost of acquisition ultimately going down and down as low as you can possibly get it, which is something great about networks and community-based products, is that those things can actually they're never going to look after themselves. Like, that's the dream. But ultimately, your acquisition cost can go really, really low. Because if a gig worker has a good experience, he's going to tell his gig worker buddies, which happens with us all the time, and it's great kind of mission accomplished moment for us.
Morality.
It's like, yes, so people are talking about this. And it's the same on the merchant side. Like, we've had merchants on board recently in London where they're saying, I actually just didn't know. And of course they didn't know about us. We've never done a big marketing push or anything like that, and even if we did, they mightn't know about us anyway. But they're telling other restaurants or other dark kitchens, I'm using this company now, this platform, it's really, really good. So anyway, so there's the cost of acquisition, there's your lifetime value. Sometimes you'll get, I haven't had this very often, but some investors are really interested in your sales process, I find, as well, especially if you've got, like, the hard side of our marketplace is the merchant side. Yeah. It's easier for us to acquire the freelancers and the gig workers, which was totally upside down, by the way, during COVID. So all of our data during COVID is inverted, which I think is interesting. I've heard other people speaking even today about similar problems. But that was upside down during COVID. But yeah, that's the kind of harder side of our market. So sometimes you'll get questions on things that get a little bit more detailed and maybe not even framed this way, but essentially what they're asking is, like, what's your return on your ad spend? Yeah. Like, if you're spending $5,000 a month on ads targeting businesses, how many are you going to convert into actual paying customers? Yeah. And what ultimately is your return on ad spend? So it's kind of a similar thing, but it's more focused on the direct kind of B2B lead gen side of the house. And obviously your cost of acquisition will fold in that ad spend cost, but it'll also fold in the salespeople and your account executives and everything else. Indeed. So there's multiple ways to look at it, but those are kind of the key ones, I think, that I've been kind of talking about for the last while. Absolutely. And how do you generate revenue? Our revenue model is essentially primarily it's transaction fees. So when the restaurant is paying the delivery driver, they get charged a 10% fee. So if it's a £100 gig, they'll pay us £10. The freelancer pays a 5% deduction, so they'll receive £95 of that gig, so it's 15% in the middle. Yes. We also have a subscription now as well for merchants, which we introduced last year, basically to access the network and to use the software. So last couple of years, the company was founded in 2018. We kind of launched properly in 2020. There was a bit of building and everything there. And since 2020, we've been very still focused on product building and merchant feedback loop and getting the platform built up, while obviously growing the revenues, improving the product market fit as well at the same time. So last year we got the product software to like just an incredible level. Like I'm really proud of that actually over the last couple of years. Like the level of the scheduling tools we have, the driver tracking, customer engagement, the mobile app for the freelancers. It's basically an all-in-one platform for both sides. Like everything is there, the admin, every tool you could need for this sector, for these pain points we've talked about is in there.
Yes.
So it was the right time then to say, yeah, look, there's a software access fee for that as well. Now we're confident and we're very proud of the software we're offering. So in addition to kind of the network piece, the transaction fee piece, we've got that SaaS model as well.
Excellent. So look, I mean, you're getting a transaction fee whenever a gig occurs, as well as the recurring revenue through the SaaS fee, which is excellent.
Yeah, and I think the big thing for us actually with introducing the SaaS is maintaining volume and maintaining that commitment, which you kind of just touched on there. But, for marketplaces, like there's the sands of the marketplace do move, there's a seasonal element to it, and whatever places are busier or quiet or whatever. So what we really wanted was to build up that volume and then maintain volume over time.
Yes.
One of your strongest levers for any founder out there in terms of behaviors of your customers and users is actually your pricing.
Indeed.
It's the best lever you have, so use it,
Yeah.
Don't be afraid. I've often heard other people, podcasts and the like, and Tim Ferriss often says that one of the biggest mistakes early founders make is they don't charge enough for what they're selling or what they've got, and they don't communicate that value in terms of why they're charging what they're charging to customers. So for us, that SaaS was actually, we didn't come to the SaaS thing where we like, let's try and make more money from this thing. It was actually just, let's get like a kind of a longer term commitment from our merchants, from the restaurants that are using us, get them to want to use it week to week for that volume, like to consistently use it, and be with us kind of for the longer term. So that was one of the levers that we had to kind of encourage that behavior was the SaaS model as well.
Fantastic. And I remember doing a study on the Amazon Prime and the amount of incremental revenue that was generating as a result of subscriptions, and even when you pull out how many people would have purchased anyway, there's still a significant amount of revenue there. So I think subscription fees are a great way to encourage extra spend. 100%.
It's that commitment to the volume, it's the commitment to the platform. It allows us to commit more strongly to our customer too. Genuinely when we get a customer, all of the merchants coming on now are signing up and paying the subscription and happy to pay it just to even get access to the network.
Fantastic.
But for us, then we can say, yeah, we're committed to this merchant.
Yes.
And then by extension, the community of gig workers that we'll create or that we'll bring into the platform, they're already there. We're not creating it, but we're bringing that community in locally. They have a sense of committed volume and committed merchants and committed platform as well. So that actually has probably been the number one tool or lever that we've introduced recently to kind of get that level of kind of certainty and longer term predictability for everybody, for ourselves, for the merchants and for the gig workers too.
Fantastic. And John, we're in a period of pretty high inflation. We were discussing before that everyone took essentially a 10% pay cut in real terms. What is the platform doing to help support merchants and gig workers during this difficult financial period?
Yeah, I think for the merchant side, first of all, I mean, just being able to control and being able to plan your own costs is really crucial. I mentioned earlier as well about, being certain that the people you have working for you are going to turn up and that you have that kind of support if somebody can't make it. Like our platform does it, but we do as a company as well. Like if a delivery driver can't make it, we'll get you somebody else.
Yeah.
So we've gotten really, really good at that refulfillment objective as well. So I think, like, fundamentally we can't change inflation. Like we can't really fix that problem, but we can fix the other problems that make business really, really hard for restaurant owners, that makes it impossible for them to essentially make a profit unless they change something.
Indeed.
And to give them that kind of certitude in terms of their own service delivery, their own hassle-free operation, their way to kind of grow their own revenues and grow their bottom line at the same time. So we're giving them a lot of ways to do that, which will indirectly help them with the kind of other obviously rising costs that they have in terms of their fuel or their inputs or their food or whatever that they're buying in.
Indeed.
The gig worker side as well. So we want to solidify that living wage initiative. We want to make it that every gig paid in the platform and every merchant on the platform is bought into that. as I said, we kind of have it in the background anyway, and the average pay is much higher than that in both the Irish and the UK markets anyway. But we just want to make that part of our SLA essentially, is that's going to be core to it. Like, we'll do this, the merchant, if you commit this to us, we will commit this to you in terms of our fulfillment rate.
Yeah.
And the gig worker can also commit and know that they're going to be, you know, correctly remunerated for their time and their efforts, you know. So that's a core part that we can help address that issue. But inflation's a big problem that we can't solve all by ourselves, so we can do our bits and pieces to help people through it.
Indeed. Thank you, John. Look, we've covered a great deal today. You know, from your background, you know, in financial services and the military, and you know, now founding Gigable. You know, sort of the problems that restaurants are facing when it comes to, you know, losing £1 per order, to, you know, potentially becoming profitable by using Gigable, with a, you know, sort of £2 or £3.50 profit per order that you mentioned. You know, the problems that restaurants and gig workers face, as well as, you know, the sort of VC perspective of investing. I wanted to see whether, you know, as a type of closing remark, you had any, let's say, your top 3 takeaways that you could provide to other founders and operators.
Top 3 takeaways, that's a good one. Okay, so we'll start with the founders. I think from my perspective, I kind of touched on it at the start of the conversation as well. Change your perspective, your mindset to dealing with problems. You know, it's really hard. It's like a daily practice.
Yes.
Because the reactive brain will straight away go, oh, it's another problem to deal with.
Indeed.
And sometimes that means you need to organize your time a bit better as well. So I think that's kind of the second follow-on point is, you know, first change your mindset to problem solving.
Yeah.
Second one is organize your time effectively, because you can't solve all the problems alone. You have to be selective. And if you have bigger problems, and problems is kind of a word that's interchangeable with opportunity, right?
Yes.
And things you're working on, whatever that might be, that's important for your business. You know, create space for that, you know, organize your time to be able to focus on the important things. We did an exercise as a team, as a management team, at the start of the year in terms of our strategic planning for this year. And ultimately, we were all talking about how can we focus on the 80-20 in our roles.
Yeah.
So what is the 80-20 for me as a CEO? What is the 80-20 for the COO, the CRO, whatever? Because I think if you lose sight of that, and again, it's a daily practice.
Indeed.
You will end up drifting into the weeds and just doing a lot of stuff that doesn't really, it all matters, but there's like degrees of matter.
Indeed.
It's very easy to lose a day or a week or months even and look back on the quarter and go, actually, I didn't put any time at all hardly into that thing that I thought was really important.
Yeah.
Why not? You know, is it because I don't think it's important anymore? Probably not. It's probably just because you just got caught up in all the other stuff, because there's just endless distractions there. So
Indeed.
So kind of those would be my kind of top 3 for founders, I think. For operators, I think in the hospitality space, and actually in a lot of industries, there's a little bit of tech phobia. You know, people are afraid of what they don't understand.
Yes.
Even in a selling context, you know, the number one reason why people don't buy something is if they're confused.
Yes.
They don't understand it, right? Which makes total sense. I wouldn't buy something if I didn't understand what it is or what it does for me.
Yeah.
So I think for operators, you know, don't be tech phobic. You know, understand the tech stack in your business.
Yes.
There are a lot of tools out there, especially now. Like, there's been a kind of an upsurge even in the last couple of years in terms of what you can do through technology as an operator, whether it's through us or anybody. It doesn't really matter. Like, there's loads of tools out there to help you manage your workforce or manage your working capital.
Yeah.
How you get access to money, how you spend your money, how you manage your power, your electricity, everything. There's things there, you know, that are cost effective pieces of technology that can really just take a lot of your hassle out of your life, you know. So I think that would be one of the key ones for operators. And I think that another one that's really big as well is just like educate yourself about your industry. You know, I think a lot of the time when we're talking to restaurants, they don't actually understand their industry fully.
Yeah.
And that's not by any fault of their own. It's not like there's a guide out there for them to read and figure it out. Like, you kind of have to pull it together yourself. But, you know, understand what are you spending on having delivery with this partner? Like, can you get more direct orders into your business? Do your customers want to order directly from you? You know, I think there's a lot of studies out there now that show that consumers are aware enough at this point that they would prefer to order direct
Yes.
than ordering through a platform, because it's cheaper for them, first of all,
Indeed.
and it's also better for the restaurant. And I think that's becoming better. So understand your industry. And I think maybe the final one for just generally for merchants is, you know, there's a lot of people trying to sell you stuff, but it's good to, you know, talk to companies or providers, or if they're tech companies, service providers, whatever it is, and kind of try and find a way yourself to differentiate who was actually there to try and help my business succeed, and who's trying to just sell me something. Because there's a lot of people who try to sell me stuff all the time, and then there's the kind of 5% of those who actually have an alignment with where this business is trying to go.
Indeed.
So you can figure that out, you know, and I think that can be something that everybody's oversold to these days, right? Between social and everything else. Yeah. So I get it. It's tough, and it's tough as well for people who work in sales. You know, you have to try and find that alignment. But I think for operators, it's worthwhile, because there are good companies and good businesses out there that are trying to help you and are aligned with your ultimate goals.
Yeah.
But it does take a bit of effort to kind of to figure out which ones are.
Indeed. Yeah. I think at the end of the day, you know, alignment creates a really strong foundation for growth.
Yeah, and it's often just not there, you know, because it's too transactional, or like we're always saying it, we try to have a really consultative approach with our customers, you know.
Yeah.
On the merchant side and also on the gig worker side, like, are we actually aligned with what they want?
Yes.
You know, it'll dictate your product roadmap, it'll dictate how you structure your SLA, it'll dictate everything, you know. So if you're not aligned and you're not listening to your customers, then you're never going to have the kind of perfect solution for them.
Indeed. John, look, thank you so much for sharing those takeaways with us. It's been a fantastic chat. Any closing remarks?
Just keep the chin up, keep striving, and you know, half the battle is turning up. That's a great army one that I always remember is the hardest part of going on exercise, going overseas, whatever it is actually just turning up.
Indeed.
Everything else after that will kind of take care of itself. So even the days you don't really want to turn up, just turn up anyway and do it, and at the end of the day you'll be happier about it. So, and likewise yourself, Lucas, appreciate the invite today and the chat, and keep going with the content. I think it's good stuff to put out there. So thanks for having me on.
Yeah, no, look, John, thank you so much. And actually another quote just to compliment yours, you know, which came from another podcast with Ahmet Ereljian, and he said a lot of people forget about finishing. You know, you got to finish. You know, focus on finishing. Don't focus on who's ahead or this and that. Just focus on finishing. So
it's a nice complimentary quote to making sure you turn up every day.
Exactly. Yeah, turn up and make sure you finish. Yeah. Excellent. Perfect. John, thank you so much for your time. Thanks, and look forward to seeing Gigable's progress.
Yeah, thanks again for having me. Appreciate it.
You're most welcome. Thank you.